Nicole and Louie, this video that we were able to get tonight gives a glimpse of what happened on May 2nd, and we want to warn our viewers, those who will be listening to this, it's going to be hard to hear.
Listen for the barrage of gunfire hailing inside of this Liberty City apartment unit for a while. Then 40 seconds into the video, you hear someone screaming. Moments later, a woman runs out of the apartment yelling down the hallway. He, police say, is Antoine Carter. The 31-year-old is accused of killing his girlfriend's brothers, Jaheim and Gianni Pierre.
Born on the same day, February 23rd, 5 years apart, dead on the same day, May 2nd, 2026. There is a 9mm Glock sitting in an evidence bag right now inside a Miami police property room. It was recovered from the front right pocket of a man who walked straight up to officers, gun still warm, and handed himself to them. He did not run. He did not ditch the weapon. He did not lawyer up. He walked outside a building where two men lay shot multiple times, approached the officers on scene and said, "I am the one. I have the firearm." That gun is the beginning of this story. Not because it fired the shots, but because of everything investigators learned from where it had been just minutes before. Because when forensic teams processed that weapon alongside the CCTV footage from that building, what they pieced together was not a case clouded in doubt or tangled in conflicting stories. It was a sequence, clear, documented, and brutal from start to finish. This is the story of Gianni Pierre, 28 years old, and his brother Jaheim Pierre, 23, two brothers from Miami who walked into an apartment on a Saturday morning to check on their sister and never walked back out. You are watching RedRage Crime TV on YouTube and on Facebook and Instagram. If you have been watching with us, you already know that this community shows up in the comments, and I want you to know that we read every single one of them. Your thoughts, your questions, your reactions, they matter here. Keep them coming. Now let's get into it. To understand what happened inside apartment 210 at 5329 Northwest 17th Avenue in Miami's Liberty City neighborhood on May 2nd, 2026, you have to start before that morning. You have to start with who Gianni and Jaheim Pierre were and why they were there in the first place. Gianni was 28. He had a daughter. He was the older brother, the one who had already started building something past his own childhood. Jaheim was 23. The younger one, still carving out what his future would look like. And here is the detail that will stay with you long after this video ends. These two brothers shared a birthday, February 23rd, same day, 5 years apart, born into the same family, raised under the same roof, close enough that when one moved, the other felt it. Their sister, Jalisa Evans, had been in a relationship with a 31-year-old man named Antoine Carter for roughly 4 years. They shared that apartment together on Northwest 17th Avenue, and according to police, there was a documented history of domestic violence between them. The family knew it. Her brothers knew it. The kind of knowing that does not come from a single conversation. It comes from watching someone you love and reading what they're not saying out loud. That is what brought Gianni and Jaheim to that building on a Saturday morning. Not a plan, not a confrontation they had been building toward. Concern. The kind of concern that makes two grown men get up and go, because waiting feels worse than showing up. When they arrived at apartment 210, Evans was inside with Carter. At some point, an argument broke out between Evans and one of her brothers. Carter stepped into it, and that is when the situation crossed from an argument into something physical. A fight broke out between Carter and the brothers inside that apartment. In the middle of it, Evans slipped out. She went to a neighbor and asked them to call the police. Then she came back, found her brothers, and locked the door. She told them, "Do not open it." What happened next is where the evidence takes over the story. That building had security cameras, and when investigators pulled the CCTV footage, it showed Antoine Carter leaving apartment 210 and walking to the parking garage. On camera, he approached a black four-door sedan. He reached into the front passenger side of that vehicle and retrieved something. He placed it into his front right pocket. Then he walked back to the building. Walked back to apartment 210. Tried the door. Locked. So he started banging. Not knocking. Banging with his fist and yelling loud enough that a neighbor in the building would later say she was woken from a dead sleep by what followed. Carter's words through that door captured in the arrest report, "Open up. I bet one of you won't open up." Now think about that for a second, because this is where the forensic picture starts to harden against Carter's later version of events. He had already been in a fight inside that apartment. He had already left the scene. He went to a vehicle, retrieved something, put it in his pocket, and walked back to a locked door. He had to bang on to get through. When detectives review CCTV footage in a case like this, they are looking at a chain of physical actions and asking a single question: does the defendant's account match what the camera recorded? Here, it did not come close. Carter would later tell detectives that he went to his car to put candles in it and get some fresh air. He said he came back for his wallet and his keys. And he said that when he re-entered the apartment, both brothers squared up with their fists raised, ready to fight again. That was his account. That was what he offered as his explanation for what came next. The problem was the camera had already told the story, and the camera does not improvise. On the other side of that door, Evans was urging her brothers, "Do not open it." She knew. Whatever instinct or experience had taught her to read Antoine Carter's behavior, she read it clearly in that moment. She told them to stay put. But Jaheim Pierre opened the door. The arrest report describes what the camera showed in the seconds that followed Carter charged into that apartment. As he moved through the doorway, his hand was already reaching into his front right pocket. The camera recorded that reach, and immediately after it, multiple gunshots rang out inside apartment 210. Here is the forensic piece that connects the physical evidence to the camera when investigators executed a search warrant on that apartment. They recovered multiple spent shell casings and projectiles throughout the unit. Each of those casings tells a story by itself. In ballistics analysis, every firearm leaves unique, microscopic marks on the casings. It ejects impressions made by the extractor and ejector mechanisms that are as individual as a fingerprint. Forensic examiners can match every recovered casing back to the specific weapon that fired it. So when investigators collected those shell casings from apartment 210 and matched them to the 9mm Glock later recovered from Carter's pocket, the physical evidence created a chain from the weapon to the room to the man. No gaps. Gianni Pierre was sitting on the couch when the shots hit him. He was 28 years old with a daughter at home, and he was sitting on a couch in his sister's apartment when Antoine Carter came through that door. Jaheim, 23 years old, ran, not out of the apartment, toward his sister. He ran to cover her, to put himself between her and the gun. When the bullet struck him, he collapsed on top of her. He died shielding her. The forensic reconstruction of a shooting scene, the placement of casings, the trajectory of projectiles, the location of blood evidence can establish where each person was standing when shots were fired. Investigators found a pool of blood near the couch where Gianni was hit and a second pool in the closet area where Jaheim came to rest after he fell. The scene reconstruction aligned with exactly what Evans told police happened, and it stood directly against Carter's claim that both brothers had squared up ready to fight when he came back through the door. One of them was on a couch. The other ran toward his sister. After the shooting, Carter sat down on the edge of the bed. He looked at Evans and said, "See what you made me do?" She said, "I told you to leave." Then she ran. Evans came out of that apartment barefoot, her feet and clothes soaked in blood, her brother's blood. She came out into that hallway and she ran. A neighbor in the building had already reported hearing 6 shots fired. The dispatch audio captured a woman calling to report that her brother had been shot.
Yes, Nicole and Louis, this video that we were able to get tonight gives a glimpse of what happened on May 2nd, and we want to warn our viewers, those who will be listening to this, it's going to be hard to hear.
Listen for the barrage of gunfire hailing inside of this Liberty City apartment unit for a while. Then 40 seconds into the video, you hear someone screaming. Moments later, a woman runs out of the apartment yelling down the hallway. He, police say, is Antoine Carter. The 31-year-old is accused of killing his girlfriend's brothers, Jaheim and Gianni Pierre.
This is a capital offense if you're found guilty.
Miami police say they have video of Carter running to a car to get a gun after he and the brothers got into an argument that turned into a fight. The sister tells police her brothers came to protect her because of a past domestic violent incident. There's a GoFundMe page online to help support the family with funeral expenses. Police say before the shooting, Carter is seen in video pacing back and forth, banging on the locked door, yelling, "I bet one of you won't open up." The arrest report says the sister urged her brothers not to open the door, but Jaheim opened it. And that's when Carter, police say, immediately started shooting. Gianni died first. Jaheim, who was injured, ran to take cover with his sister, but police say he collapsed on top of her. The report says after the shooting, Carter sat at the edge of the bed, told his girlfriend, quote, "You see what you made me do?" And she tells him, "I told you to leave." Then she runs out of the apartment.
Evans found officers and told them exactly what happened. She told them her boyfriend had shot her brothers. In the immediate aftermath of that kind of violence, that level of shock, that level of loss, she was clear. She did not protect him. She told them who did it and what he was to her. Meanwhile, outside the building, Carter approached an officer on the scene. Pacing in front of the building, he walked up to Officer Camilo and said, "I am the one. I have the firearm." The Glock was in his right front pocket, right where the camera had shown him place. At the car, Officer Camilo detained him and secured the weapon on the spot. No pursuit, no foot chase, no tip from a witness. He walked up and said it. In forensic psychology, this kind of voluntary confession at the scene is studied carefully, not because it proves remorse, but because of what it reveals about how a person processes what they've just done. When someone confesses immediately and voluntarily but then gives detectives a version of events that contradicts the physical evidence, investigators read that as compartmentalization, admitting the act while attempting to reconstruct the narrative around intent. Carter told Officer Camilo he was the one. Then hours later, he told Detective Hernandez the brothers had squared up on him when he came back in, but the camera showed the reach before the shots. The blood pools showed where each man was standing, and Jaheim Pierre died on top of his sister trying to cover her. None of that matched a man walking back in and finding 2 people ready to fight. Jaheim Pierre was declared deceased at the scene at 12:30 in the afternoon. Gianni Pierre was rushed to Ryder Trauma Center in critical condition. At 1:05 p.m. he was gone too. But that's it for a moment. On the Monday following the shooting, Antoine Carter appeared in bond court. The state moved for pretrial detention. The judge did not hesitate. "I am going to grant the state's motion for pretrial detention pending final hearing and hold you with no bond. 2 counts of first-degree murder. Carter was remanded to Turner Guilford Night Correctional Center with no path out before trial. Now, there has been a conversation running online since this story broke, people pointing at Jaleesa Evans, questioning why she called her brothers, questioning what she should have done differently. And I want to address that directly because the evidence does not support that framing. First, according to a family member who posted publicly after this story spread, Evans did not call her brothers that morning. They came on their own because they were worried. That is a meaningful distinction, and it matters. Second, the question of why women in domestic violence situations do not simply call the police and leave ignores 4 years of documented history, the emotional architecture of an abusive relationship, and the reality that even women who do call the police are not always protected. Evans went to a neighbor and asked them to make that call. She told her brothers not to open the door. She survived this and has to live with it. She does not need the weight of everyone else's second-guessing added to what she's already carrying. There has also been an unconfirmed allegation circulating online, and I am naming it unconfirmed because it has not been verified that Child Protective Services removed Evans' children following the incident. That detail, if true, adds another layer of devastation to an already incomprehensible situation. A woman who survived the shooting of both her brothers in the same room on the same morning, potentially losing her children in the same week. That is a level of loss that does not fit inside a single conversation. The aunt of Gianni and Jaheim, Tavia Williams, posted publicly on May 8 asking for compassion from people sharing opinions online. She identified herself, asked that people respect the memory of her nephews and the grief of the family, and pointed to a GoFundMe set up to help with funeral expenses. Her words were measured and real. Bitty boy Gianni and Rodney Sol Jaheim, take your rest. 2 brothers named by the woman who loved them. That is what this case is actually about. Some people online have raised Florida's Stand Your Ground law in relation to Carter, given that he surrendered voluntarily and gave a statement. Let's be clear about what that law covers and what it does not. Stand Your Ground allows a person to use force in self-defense when they reasonably believe they face imminent harm, without requiring them to retreat first. But Carter retreated. He left the apartment. He walked to a parking garage, retrieved a weapon, walked back to a locked door. He had to pound on to get through, and charged in. You cannot leave a scene, arm yourself, return to a locked door, force your way in, and claim you stood your ground. The law does not bend that far, and the CCTV footage makes sure of it. What does this case come back to at the end? 2 brothers who showed up because they loved their sister. A man who left a fight, made a choice, came back through a locked door and opened fire. A woman who told her brothers not to open that door watched Jaheim open it anyway, and then ran out into a hallway covered in their blood. A system that put a gun in an evidence bag, pulled the footage, matched the casings, and built a case that the camera had already solved. And 2 young men, Gianni, 28, with a daughter who will grow up without her father. Jaheim, 23, who in his last moments ran toward his sister instead of away. Here is where I leave it with you. You have the CCTV footage showing Carter retrieving the weapon at the car. You have the footage showing him charging through the door with his hand already reaching into his pocket. You have the shell casing evidence matched to the weapon recovered from his pocket at the scene. You have the crime scene reconstruction showing where each victim was positioned when shots were fired, one on a couch, one running toward his sister. You have Carter's own voluntary statement at the scene, and you have his account to detectives that contradicts all of it. If you were on that jury, if this evidence landed in front of you and the judge asked whether the state had proven its case beyond a reasonable doubt, would it be enough? That is the question for the comments this week. I want to hear how you read the evidence, and if this case hit you the way it hit me, share this video. Let it reach somebody who needs to understand what domestic violence actually looks like, not just inside the relationship, but for every person who loves the person inside it. You are watching RedRage Crime TV on YouTube and on Facebook and Instagram. Thank you for being here. Thank you for every comment. I read them all. Rest in peace, Gianni Pierre. Rest in peace, Jaheim Pierre. Same birthday, same family, same apartment, same morning. And they still showed up for her.
A man is in custody after police say he shot and killed his girlfriend's two brothers. This happened after an argument escalated into a shooting. CBS News Miami's Maribel Rodriguez is your reporter in Miami with what neighbors are saying about this.
Woke from dead sleep. 5 gunshots. Pow, 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 pow. And then the door slammed underneath my balcony.
That's what Gina Kirk said she heard Saturday morning coming from a neighbor's apartment at 5329 Northwest 17th Avenue.
Good morning, Mr. Carter.
According to police, it was this man, 31-year-old Antoine Carter, who fired the shots. When officials arrived to this building in Miami, they found 2 men in their 20s shot multiple times inside one of the apartments. One of them was dead. The other died at the hospital.
There's probable cause for the charges. It looks like he shot and killed a girlfriend's two brothers.
Police say Carter's girlfriend's brothers went to check up on her and when they arrived, got into a fight with Carter. According to investigators, they found Carter outside the building who told them, quote, "I am the one," and the gun was found in his pocket. Carter was taken into custody and appeared in bond court on Monday.
I'm going to grant the state's motion for pretrial detention pending final hearing and hold you with no bond.
And Carter is being charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder, and according to police, he does have a history of domestic violence. In Miami, Maribel Rodriguez, CBS News, Miami.